This is part 2 of the rigging demo of how to set up a joint system and then now to skin the character and attach the geometry correctly. So in the previous video we discussed how to set up the joint system for a basic humanoid character and then also to modify for this kind of mix between a quadruped and a human character. So the only things that I've done differently this time from the last video is that I've added joints for the antennas, all 3 antennas, 2 on each side, and then I've just made sure I've colorized everything, made sure everything is in the exact position that I want it to be, because it's kind of dependent on the position as far as how everything gets moved around or assigned and then linked together for the animation. Okay, so naming is really important. One thing I wanted to show you was the schematic views. The schematic view is up here to the left of the material editor. Schematic view is a view that allows us to visually see how things are organized in our scene. This is very helpful for rigging to be able to see the hierarchy. So as I mentioned in the previous video, the joint systems in 3S Max, the bones are all linked according to a parent-child relationship. So if I select the pelvis, base pelvis, it moves everything. But if I select like this right leg, it just moves everything underneath there. So I'm just going to visually organize this a little better so it looks from bottom to top instead of from top to bottom. Okay, there's one leg. There's left leg. Here's some more spine joints. So we'll kind of pop and snap into place. The right arm we'll do right on that side, and we'll do left on this side. Continue rolling up here to the neck. Okay, top antenna. Left eye's over here, right eye's over there. Left antenna, right antenna. And then I can move these vice versa the opposite way. Okay, it's not the cleanest in the world, but we can always clean that up later. Front pelvis, okay, there's left hip. Then there's the back leg. So let's see, like here's another way that we can find if we did not name something. So here's the connect bone that wasn't named right. So we'll call this one left L, left leg connect. Okay, so left side. Then right side, move things up. Another bone that wasn't named right. We'll actually call this one left leg connect, and then we'll call this one left B for back leg connect. Make it simple. Okay, so you can take a look at the system, and it will look like an actual joint system. Here's my 2 eyes. Here's my antennas. And then there's left arm, right arm, and then left front leg, left back leg, and then left front leg, right front leg, and then left back leg, left right back leg. So I also have a couple joints that actually aren't even linked properly, so those are something I need to go ahead and fix. The system is very easy to be able to figure out what joints are not linked. So if I go back up to the bone tools, and let's find my head joint here. Let's go to connect and connect this jaw bone to that. What you see that it'll do is it'll go ahead and kind of snap this to the bones that are already in your system here. So it actually put it to my head joint there. All I have to do is just rename this one jaw. Let's actually rename it jaw connect. There we go. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and recolorize this just to make sure everything is in line before I do anything else. Here we go. Okay, so schematic view is really nice for being able to kind of visually see how everything is linked together. So here's all my other geometry. I don't have a whole lot, but I have my body, I have my 2 eyes, and then teeth, and then the tongue. So some of this geometry will actually be skinned, which is the process of deforming the geometry according to the nearest vertex, nearest joint, or the adjusted joint. Or it's going to be linked or parented, like the eyes, the teeth, and then maybe the tongue. We'll just link the tongue right now. I might even put a joint system in the tongue, but that's not really necessary for right now. But anything that doesn't need to deform, just needs to rotate or move with a joint, like the eyes, the teeth, and the tongue in this case, those can be linked together. So we're actually going to go ahead and link those together. Let's turn on my geometry. Other than my body right now, let's turn everything off, or my body off, we'll leave everything else on. Okay, so my eyes are just going to get linked to my eye joint that it's closest to. So I can do this visually, or I can do this in the schematic view. In the schematic view, there's a link button right up here as well. So if you like to have things a little closer, you can do the link button and link an object that way. Or I can do this visually with my link tool on the top left near the tool section. I'm going to select the child, which is going to be my eye geometry, and link that to my eye joint. So basically you select the child and link it to whatever's going to be moving that or rotating that. Okay, so right eye, I'm going to click and drag that to my right eye joint. The eye joint should blink. Might be hard to see. Let's see if we can get it in wireframe mode. You see it blink there. So the joint will blink to let you know this object is going to be the parent and controlling the joint or the geometry underneath that. Do the same thing for the other side. Child, eye geometry to the eye joint. Good. Do the same thing for the teeth. So the bottom teeth and the tongue are going to be linked to the jaw. The top teeth is going to be linked to the head up here. So when the head rotates, it rotates the top teeth. So there we go. Link that to the head. And then the bottom teeth to the jaw. And also the tongue to the jaw. There we go. Okay, so now let's open up the schematic view again. In the schematic view, you can see where the things are linked up. So there's my tongue. There's my bottom teeth. Those are both linked to the jaw, base jaw. There's my top teeth, and that's linked to my head. Right eye is linked to my right eye. Left eye, left eye. There we go. So geometry that just needs to rotate. Now if I rotate my jaw, it rotates just that geometry. But if I rotate my head, that should rotate everything. So let's go select the eye. So eye, it'll rotate that eye. And always test things out. So see if they actually do work how you intend them to be. If they don't, then you might need to unlink. There's also an unlink button. If I select geometry, I can just click the unlink and it's no longer linked to anything at that point. Okay, everything is linked except for the body. And the body doesn't get linked. The body uses the skin modifier. So this allows me to be able to use blending options to be able to determine what areas are, what vertices are being rotated and moved with what joints. So now I will go ahead and try to link the vertices that are closest to joints that I can find. Now sometimes they'll do a little better job than others, but this is another reason why it's good to start off with the T-pose or a modified T-pose like this that allows you to be able to have more room to be able to adjust the joints. And what's called the skin weighting. Okay, so we need to have the body selected, and it can't be in the semi-transparent mode with using Alt-X, so you need to hit Alt-X again to make it back visual. And this is the skin modifier. So I already have this on one of my preset buttons. If you go to Modify tab, Configure Modifier Sets, you can drag different modifiers over here. So that's what I've done. So all you have to do is select skin, or underneath the modifier list, you can just go find skin this way. So the object must be selected, and then click on skin. So it assigns a modifier to the geometry, but we have to also assign it to the joints as well. Now we don't actually select the joints or bones and apply the same modifier. Instead, over here under the Command Panel Modifier tab, where it says bones, I'm going to click Add, and that pulls up a Select Bones menu. And if I hold down Control and click on the plus symbol, it allows me to see all of my bones. So there's all of my bones. And what I want to do, I don't want to hit Control A just yet because my geometry is actually linked under here as well. I don't want to assign geometry as a bone. So let's turn off Display Geometry. And now I want to hit Control A. And that allows me to select all of my bones that I've just created. Click Select, and that adds it to my skin modifiers. What that goes ahead and does is takes vertices that are closest to each bone and assigns it to this joint. So when I rotate the joint or move the joint, it moves that or rotates that vertex as well. So what I can do now is, let's actually, with the geometry selected, let's hit Alt X so I can just visually see through this for a second. And let's freeze my geometry. Okay, so it's always good to go ahead and test things out to see how well the skin modifier actually worked. So let's select the shoulder bone there. Like you see, as you can see, the vertices do rotate or move with it. There are some problem areas underneath the arm. Let's go to the elbow. Rotate the elbow up. Let's go down to the fingers. And rotate the fingers. Good. So I want to test every joint. Make sure everything does rotate relatively the areas that I want to. Now, there will be problem areas where the body meets the legs and arms, extremities, but it does a pretty decent job. So like the spine joint, I can rotate that. It does a pretty decent job. And what it doesn't do is do pretty decent blending of the joints. So like especially in another area, you can see this is where the jaw is. So when I rotate the jaw, it actually rotates some of the vertices on the top of the mouth. So there are specific tools that allow us to adjust this. In this video, we'll briefly just explain the tool set, and then it'll be up to you to kind of refine those. So let's turn off the unfrozen layer. So in order to see all this, you need to have the geometry outside of transparent mode. So I hit Alt X again. Don't need my Scene Explorer right now. Okay, so I need to turn on Edit Envelopes. And then also select vertices allows me to select vertices to be able to see what's affected. So let's go see if we can find like that shoulder area. So rotate that shoulder. It was pretty difficult to be able to go down here. Let's see, right shoulder. We'll do right shoulder. Okay, so here's the right shoulder, and it color coordinates it as long as I'm in Edit Envelope and select vertices. Color coordinates it according to how much this joint is affecting vertices. The warmer, as far as the closer to red the joint, the vertex is for this joint, the more it's going to affect it. The closer to blue, or even not colored at all, if it has the basic texture on there, it is going to not affect that area at all. So when I'm in Edit Envelope, there's different ways for me to be able to adjust this. And the envelope has little dots, and it has kind of cylindrical shapes on there that allow me to drag out and in the areas of effectiveness. So this is one easy way to kind of map out some of the larger areas. There's an outer section, and then there's an inner section. So if I drag out, whoops, find it again. Trying to select the area. If I can drag out the inner section, that shows me how much of an area is going to be 100% affected. So let's try to find the outer area. So I can drag it in and out and adjust the shape. There's also a point on either end of the joint that allows me to be able to move this around. So something like the elbow, which the joint's actually at the bottom, I might want to move the actual point up. It's a yellow line. And there's small little dots on either side, so you can move them around. So this shows you a cooler area. Just like the outer section. Drag this out a little bit. Because I do want it to affect a larger area than what it shows here. Let's move that down. Bit. Move that in some. So this allows it to be able to adjust some areas. Well, that doesn't work all the time. Another way we can adjust this is by actually changing the absolute weight. So if I scroll down some, if I select a vertex, we want to blend this a little bit. I don't want to take the weight off completely. I can show you that. So let's select these vertices on the torso area. And here's the absolute effect. So it's a weight property. If I put in 0 here, it should take that weight off. But instead of removing the weight, probably the better idea, and the reason why it's not showing me, is because I need to go to a spine joint. Spine. So maybe that one right there, and add the weight to this. It has no idea really where to put that weight. So instead of removing weight from a joint, I add that weight 100% to a joint nearest to it that I want it to affect. So then now if I go back to my right shoulder, you see that weight's taken off. Okay, so let's make the object semi-transparent. Let's go move that also with my layers panel. Let's also freeze my geometry for a second. Let's go rotate that shoulder joint. So it's doing a lot better job from the arm point of view, but it's pinching too much, and there's not a lot of blending going on here. So what I would try to do next is to go back through. It's just a repetitive process. Let's unfreeze it or unhide it again. And I would just add some weight back to that right shoulder. Right shoulder, there it is. Okay, so back in vertex mode, I will need to select some of these vertices and start to add some weight to this. So if I add, let's try 0.5. That'll add like a yellow value. See this area turned yellow. If I add 0.1, that adds more of a blue value. 0.2 is more of green. So this area, since it's close, I probably want, let's try 0.3. And as I'm getting further away, I want it to affect it less and less. So I probably need to come up here to these areas. Let's try 0.2 there. Let's do, it's okay for right now. So probably some of these areas as well. Let's do 0.1. Might even need to turn that down even more. Some of these back here, let's do 0.1. Okay, so now let's just go back out. Let's make this semi-transparent. Open up my layers panel and freeze my layer. And let's rotate that out. So as you can see, I'm starting to get a little bit better deformation now. Still not perfect. Some of the vertices on the bottom still need to be adjusted some, but it's looking a lot better. It's not just flat pinching anymore or stopping the weight in some areas. Okay, so just some small tune adjustment here. Make sure envelope. Okay, let's find right shoulder. And then maybe these vertices down here, I need to add something even smaller than 0.1, like 0.05. And it'll still add the blue color, but it's just adding it even less. So let's say 0.05 for that one. Basically, I just want to work on blending here. 0.05. Then let's go back out, just repeat the same process. And each joint would need to be adjusted like this. So that way when I move geometry or rotate geometry, it doesn't pinch things too much. So that shoulder area is looking a lot better now, or underneath the arm. The top of the shoulder will need some refinement just like this as well. So what I'm willing to do is go through each individual joint and work up the major areas with blending the weights, manually blending the weights for what needs to rotate and blend correctly, smoothly. So some of the major areas that you will need to work on is always underneath the arm and on top of the arm, the shoulder. The neck area, if I rotate the neck, it's kind of weird. If you have mouth or geometry for, or joints for the facial features, you need to work up the jaw, the eyes. Also, the hips is a major area for both of these. Not too bad. But go back and look through each joint, like especially where fingers are close together. It's not actually rotating the fingers next to it, but that's something to make sure. Go look at the toes really quickly. So it's doing a pretty good job with that toe as well, not really rotating the other toes. But take a look at things like the ankle. It's not rotating it completely correctly there. Something that also has a larger bend to it, like this one, might need some refinement as well. So the main idea is that you have to go through and edit the weights. It's tedious, but it is necessary if you want your geometry to bend correctly with the joints. Now the only joint that you should ever move is the base joint here. So let's freeze that again. The base joint for this character is the back pelvis. So if I move that, all of my geometry should now move. It's a good way to test everything. If anything is linked properly or if anything is skinned properly, if you move the base joint, everything should move with it. And other than that, eyes should rotate, mouth shapes like the teeth and tongue should rotate because they are just linked. And then the body is skinned. Now one last thing is, let's turn off the geometry freeze for a second, is we do have mirror skin weights. So my skin weights are already on, but what I want to do is go down to the bottom. And here's my mirror weight option. So I have paste green to blue. And what I want to do, see if I can find it, my object character again, there you go, is turn on mirror mode to be able to see what side's what here. So you can kind of see, it's a little hard to see, but my green is on one side and my blue is on the other side. So it typically is on the x-axis, which side's which. Green is going to be looking down right, blue is going to be towards the left. So I worked on my right side, so I want to choose green or paste green to blue bones. I also have paste green to blue vertices, so I might want to try the vertices first. And then if I turn off mirror mode, I can go back up and let's see if I can find my left shoulder. Left shoulder, okay. I should see where those joints have been adjusted. It didn't look like it did it correctly, so let's go back down and let's turn on mirror mode, and let's also do paste green to blue bones. Let's make sure paste green to blue vertices as well. So that way that'll copy over what we do from one side to the other side. Right shoulder, on the left side, the left shoulder should be set up. So that's definitely one way to be able to go through and save on the amount of skin weighting, which is the process of blending the weights, the skin weighting one side to the other side in a more effective way. So just make sure you go through all of your joints and be able to locate what areas need or have issues with blending or the deformation of the smooth skin body, and adjust them either with the envelopes or with absolute effect. So that'll wrap up this video. The next video we'll come back and talk about setting up a control rig to be able to animate these bones a little bit easier.